Hey guys, Squishy Flaps here with another deck playthrough of our Fiora Z standalone wins deck that we went ahead and did an analysis of yesterday. Go ahead and check out our videos for that one. But we ended up going against rank 72 on ladder in Master League's Doom's Desire with a Z Lucian same region deck. Lucian tends to be aggro oriented, so go ahead and get to these mulligans and see what we're up against. This isn't a, I would say, meta deck because not something as prominent you'll see on ladder, but anyone close to top 50 in Masters League with it is definitely doing well. So we pull our standalone, which is our best case scenario for our turn 3 turn 3 power swing. Twin Disciples is our cheaper version of standalone for guaranteeing that our 3-cost power minions stay alive on turn 3. So we're going to go ahead and send that Twin Disciples back. Laurent Bladekeeper is another weaker version of standalone, which we have to stall a turn to go for, or as a follow-up turn to our turn 3. And without having our Fiora Z, Solitary Monk, even Shadow Assassin in our hand, we need to find that immediately. So we're going to go ahead and send Disciples and Bladekeeper back, and Kinko being a tech card for aggro, which this deck is aggro, but that could have been an option. With the Lucian, this could have been an option, though he has quick attack. I didn't want to play around that. I wanted to play around getting my clock for his Nexus on the board, which we don't draw. We still get a Will of Ionia, Spirit's Refuge for another aggro tech card in a single combat. But I do get the 3-cost Shadow Assassin, which will allow us to put a clock on our opponent with the standalone. You'll notice again, just like in the Ezreal Elnuck deck that we posted the other day, first 2 turns, quick passes, even versus aggro. If we had the Bright Steel in hand, we could consider to drop here, but versus a 2/2, we have the Spirit's Refuge to be able to lifesteal anything back at this point. With him dropping the War Chef, assuming I had the Bright Steel in hand, that could have been an option to drop there because he's going to return with an immediate swing. On most case scenarios, he'll return with an immediate swing to hit me for 5, which on turn 3 is some pretty good damage, which that Bright Steel could slow down. But we do have the standalone elusive package, so we're in a safe spot to defend if he decides to not attack immediately. He spends all of his mana, so we have no threats on the board. It's a pretty straightforward Shadow Assassin. Gets our unit on the board. And then we're all only 3-cost spell at the moment is standalone, so this is pretty self-explanatory. Shadow Assassin with the standalone is going to survive Zed with 1 HP. And puts us at 10 on turn 3, so pretty strong aggro coming out from Doom Desire. So you'll see I was very quick to go into the swing here. We have 4 mana, so we have poker bluff of having Deny or almost anything in our toolkit for keeping him alive versus 3 mana Demacia Ionia. Their real only options here are a Detainment, which he is 1 mana short of having. He could have a single combat, which we have in hand, to take out the elusive unit. Or he could have a Will of Ionia, which we again have in hand as well, to reset the tempo. But luckily we have our 4 mana to pretty much handle any one of those threats, so it's a straightforward swing immediately. He has no reaction, or at least to our combat, and he's going to immediately spawn with another board filled quite a bit of damage the next turn. What's that, 5, 8? 8 damage. This is me adding up his potential damage on board. This turn is a key moment for me. That's why I'm kind of adding up, is because this 4 mana, I could potentially will have Ionia, the 3 cost, back to his hand, which on turn 5 he would to drop would mean 1 less potential minion he has to threaten our Nexus with. However, we have Spirit's Refuge as a means of life still, so the extra mana next turn makes it even easier. And then the coup de grace here is Judgment, especially when we have Fiora on board. But turn 5 is the earliest we can actually cast Judgment with that spell mana, so it's kind of a pretty easy pass here to get to this next turn. And then he, 1-drop wise, has another Cithra. He has a full board right now, makes Judgment a very scary play for our opponent. With the Bannerman too, so he has a full buffed board now. However, our 5 damage elusive, even with the War Chef's buff on a unit, can clear this entire board. And I lead to pass. Only other options here is Bright Stealing and Elusive to block, which still leaves me mana for Spirit's Refuge, or Zed as a chump blocker, since we already have our standalone Elusive, so he has no ways of stopping our clock on him. But with him having only 1 mana and having no means of stopping Judgment at this point, it's safer just to pass. And understandingly enough, Doom Desire being rank 70 in Masters sees that play potentially in hand and passes me with a full 8 mana. So pretty good tempo play by him. Now, right now we're on a turn 3 clock, which is always something to be aware of when you're playing this deck versus aggro matchups and mid-range matchups. Even though you're more so focused on controlling the board and keeping your minion alive, you always want to be aware of your available clock. So I have 9 mana in hand, so we have the standalone Twin Disciples for 11 damage here, and then the Riposte gets it up to 14, so I end up actually being 1 HP short of lethal here, which I'm adding up here during this playthrough. So because I know I'm short of lethal in 1 turn, I swing, and I don't want to risk him or any unused mana here. So I do the standalone to put him on reduce our clock from 3 to 2, which damage is going to go through. But looking at the board state before this elusive goes through, the reason why we're not putting any further damage on him, we could have put the Riposte instead of the standalone, but flatline HP that will stay there the following turns is obviously better. And then we're also safe of his potential threats, like the Detainment that we said earlier, or the Will of Ionia. The Will of Ionia is our biggest threat here, which we don't have the deny for, but our 4 mana poker bluffs it at this point. Our only response to it to even help get some board clear would be to single combat with a Spirit's Refuge to at least heal for 8. And then if he did go ahead and try to do an attainment, then we would be able to Will of Ionia or single combat kill that unit to prevent that from resolving. So 6 mana is a very perfect number for us, which the 3 mana from standalone kept us at, as opposed to putting a barrier on him. Just me valuing out our different options. The attack goes through here, so I'm just speeding it up along, and ending my turn, he drops a Cythera the Bold, which puts his board state at a pretty scary point. I have the Judgment, but next turn I would have 10 mana, so Judgment would not leave me enough mana for a Will of Ionia to protect my unit, or even to bluff for a deny. I would only have single combat as an option. So because of this, I opt to Will of Ionia his Cythera the Bold, forcing him to commit to another 6 mana next turn if he wants that for his board state, which is a pretty good tempo play for us and still saves us 2 mana to have for Judgment or other options next turn. So sending it back to him, our opponent is kind of doing a poker bluff here. He's had lots of potential baits with the detainments, because especially with the higher elo players, even though him doing detainments or purifies and things earlier in the game, they can be kind of baiting you to put more resources. Me standaloning this one more time before he detains gets a lot more value when he still isn't in a threat, or if I have mana available for protection. So he's been playing this matchup really well so far, but he immediately goes into swinging for lethal here, which we have the Judgment play with our 9 mana that could clear the board. However, the Judgment play leaves us wide open to lots of options. We put this on any unit and Judgment. He can purify and we lose. He can respond with a Judgment himself, actually, at this point. He can respond with detainments that we were talking about, the Will of Ionias, and leaving him with all of that mana is too scary of an option to put in his court. So I opt to Spirit's Refuge, which heals me back up to 18 and puts me at 4 HP, which is a key point here as well. So another big threat from Demacia. Sorry, my kid's to my right, so keep checking on him. Is going to be back-to-back. So back-to-back is a +3/+3 to 2 units, which would most likely go to his 2 4/4s, which would put 6 damage on the board. That would make this block, even with the lifesteal, still be lethal. But luckily, we still have mana to where we could Twin Disciples and single combat. The single combat would allow us to get another 8 HP of lifesteal, and the Twin Disciples would save our unit from the damage, so that we would be able to survive that back-to-back. But again, we want to bait cards. One of the key things about this deck is you want value. Me playing single combat Twin Disciples to kill 2 units is very valuable here. It keeps us alive and it kills 2 things on the board, and we have lethal next turn, but we want our opponent to commit his resources to things to get higher value, just so that we have less threats off the board in our to predict what he has. So he had the response. If we had chosen the Judgment, he would have been able to single combat here. And it's pretty easy. Twin Disciples is the only necessary play I need here to defend our 8/4 from dying. The 4 cost will hit the shield, and then Twin Disciples brings him to 8/7, so the 4 doesn't kill our Shadow Elusive or Shadow Assassin. And then him doing a single combat procs another form of lifesteal, so we're gonna heal quite a bit this turn. And then he's still at the 6 mana, so the detainment is still a strong threat here. So the Twin Disciple still leaves us our single combat as an option for protection as well. So just letting that play out. He has no response. Luckily, I don't make that misplay there. I have no reason to single combat anything on the board because he still has that detainment option in hand. He empties his entire board with Cythera, which I could spend the Brightsteel for, but we don't need it for lethal next turn. And we drop the Rally, which guarantees us a swinging for 16 here, and he has nothing left in his arsenal to defend that. Good win showing off the deck against a very high tier deck from Masters, so thanks again for stopping by.